the absolute absence of empathy, the playing with empathy, just to have the semblance of feelings. How she takes from him his own vulnerability to make herself the center. Here in providing for folks a reading of a piece of art. A movie clip, too, really, from the same movie. Folks may well want more of the movie. They may desire that there be a further context to the movie in order to make some furtherance of the points being made. I don't desire to dissuade entirely from such efforts, but I shall hold firm to the following point. What is made here is relevant within its own context. Y'all, folks, interpreters, dreamers, these folks may indeed possibly try to make some further point of relevance to the movie itself by way of some further clips, some further breadth of analysis that attempts to take other aspects of the movie to make some different point about it all. But then I am not making some particularly broad point here. I want to focus on two scenes that highlight the reality, not the movie but the reality, and the emotive reality of what it is to be a man in the house of feminine suffering. Feminine suffering here means the reality whereby suffering is generally associated with the feminine, erroneously or not, such as emotional vulnerability, compared to, for instance, physical suffering, which is generally associated with masculinity. A house in this context, I feel like folks just ought to learn about that on their own. I suggest folks come to the table trying to understand a bit more the emotive elements here, rather than the rational aspects per se. Not to entirely segregate these, I don't think they ought be regardless of if they could be, or even if they need be. Oughts transcend such silly considerations as these. I don't want folks to come at this from a highly gendered point of view, despite noting well how this is explicitly about masculinity in the house of feminine suffering. It's blush a distinctly feminine and masculine, hence a gendered depiction. While it is, perhaps, not taking queer on its own terms directly, it is at the least taking the queer indirectly on its own terms, perversely through the masculine and the feminine. The masculine through the emotive states that are at least in their pink blushes feminine. Such is an inherently queer disposition, just in that it doesn't understand the narrative as strictly defined by the masculinity nor the femininity, but rather by way of the porosity between these broad gendered dispositions. A means of musing them, though not for their amusement, for our own.
Will come to California with me.
What?
I want you to come to California with me.
You sure about that?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, but how do you know?
I don't know. I just know.
Yeah, but how do you know?
I know because I feel it.
Because that's a really serious thing you say.
I know.
You could be in California next week and, you might find out something about me you don't like and, maybe you wish you hadn't said that, but, it's such a serious thing that you can't take it back, and now I'm stuck in California. Someone doesn't really want to be with me, just wish they had a take back.
A what? What's the take back? I don't want to take back. I just want you to come to California with me.
Well, I can't go to California with you, so...
Why not?
One, because I've got a job here. And two, because I live here.
Look, if you don't love me, you should just tell me because it's such
I don't love you.
Then why? Why won't you come? What are you so scared of?
What am I so scared of?
Well, what aren't you scared of? You live in this safe little world where no one challenges you and you're scared shitless to do anything else because
Don't
that
tell
won't
me
mean that
about
you
my
have to
world. Don't
change.
tell me about my world. You just want to have your little fling with, the guy from the other side of town. Then you're going to go off to Stanford. You're going to marry some rich prick who your parents will approve of and just sit around with the other trust fund babies and talk about how you went slumming too once.
Why are you saying this? What is your obsession with this money? My father died when I was 13 and I inherited this money. You don't think every day I wake up and I wish that I could give it back? That I would give it back in a second if it meant I could have one more day with him. But I can't. and that's my life, and I deal with it. So don't put your shit on me when you're the one that's afraid.
I'm afraid. What am I afraid of? What the fuck am I afraid of?
You're afraid of me. You're afraid that I won't love you back. You know what? I'm afraid too. Fuck it, I want to give it a shot, and at least I'm honest with you.
I'm not honest with you?
No, what about your 12 brothers? No, you're not going. You're not leaving.
What do you want to know? What? That I don't have 12 brothers?
Yeah.
That I'm a fucking orphan? No,
Yeah.
you don't want to hear that.
I didn't know
no,
that.
you don't want to hear that. You don't want to hear
didn't
that I
know
got
it.
fucking cigarettes put out of me when I was a little kid.
I didn't know
That this
that.
isn't fucking surgery, that the motherfucker stabbed me. You don't want to hear that shit, Skylar.
I
don't
do want to
Don't
hear
tell
that.
me you want to hear that
I
shit.
want to hear it because I want to help you, because I want
Help
to
me?
be
What
with
the fuck? What do I got? A fucking sign on my back that says save me?
No.
Do I look like I need that?
No, God, I just want to be with
Don't
you because
bullshit
I love you.
Don't bullshit me.
I
Don't you
love you.
fucking
I love
bullshit
you.
me.
I love you. I want to hear you say that you don't love me. Because if you say that, then I won't call you. And I won't be in your life.
I don't love you.
Pay attention to how she is feeling for him in a certain sense. I mean, expressing the emotive aspects that ought be expressed by him. Doing the feeling for him, as if by theft of the emotive circumstance. The ought therein deriving from the central theme and point of the scene, namely his own personal negative experiences. The opening of the scene, of course, is not about that. It is about love, and it is genuine, a heartfelt expression of love longing to be together. Such is how it begins. But it moves rather quickly, too, towards first Skylar's more personal emotive states, and then the main thrust of the scene, Will's personal emotive states. Notice well how Skylar turns the questions into something about her in particular. The questions of if he loves her or not, centering her and her own well-being rather than the lovers as lovers or Will's well-being. This could be fine in the early part of the scene, but note how he tells her that isn't it, and he explains rather well exactly what it is. Yet, but the end of the scene, she again returns to that point, centering herself and not him, during which he says no, but it is relatively quietly said, a denial of her demand that he tell her that he doesn't love her. Something she ignores, or doesn't hear, but either way insists upon the point with him. But would also note the emotive point of compassion, the cry point in the scene, is also one for the audience, and the rarity of the feeling and expression towards men when their own pain is acknowledged as real. Watching the scene, Skylar's compassion for Will is actually genuine. Her expressions are real for him. While the dude's experiences are a bit over the top, most dudes have some kind of relatable experiences, whereby the notion that anyone would take their emotional well-being seriously is simply incredulous. Hence, don't bullshit me. Note how folks might read that as some kind of masculine defense mechanism rather than just the rawness of the situation. This blaming of men, the blaming of Will for their own hardships, and the centering of someone else, generally a woman or a child. Skylar makes it about herself primarily, even in her displays of empathy toward his pain, even when she is clearly in a position that doesn't really know or understand that kind of thing. I mean, she seems shocked to the point of it all, genuinely taken aback by it, genuinely empathetic to him. That is what makes it the cry point for her, for me, for the audience. We are made to feel his emotions by way of her expressions, for he, as most all dudes know, he too knows that there is no real empathy or sympathy for his experience. Partly, I mean, he and we know this from the experiences he and we've had, whereby the reality of life is simply that boys don't cry not as a defense mechanism, nah, but as a matter of the reality within which boys grow. No one gives a shit, so why cry about it like a little bitch? Meaning, after all, only a girl's tears would be taken seriously anyway. I don't mean that as particularly indicative of a problem either. That is, while there is a clear sexism happening, meaning a difference based of gender that is enforced by social norms, all that stuff, I don't want to present it either as a bad. Boys learn that not as a matter of some kind of strange, twisted notion of patriarchy, but simply that no one actually gives a shit about them. No one. That's the reality they live in. Women, in particular, do not give a shit about them. I mean, maybe they're mothers, but beyond that, they're lovers, sisters, lady friends, daughters, lady strangers. Not a one of them gives a shit. And we know it. The emotive state of being is that of women, not by biology, and not by way of patriarchy doing some inwards looking, but those outwards aspects, whereby the feminine, the matriarchal structures, which by that I just mean the feminine dominate spheres of life, structure tears for themselves. We can look at it in the queer disposition too, namely, that there is something altogether queered whereby a boy or a man cries, shows, I don't even want to say vulnerability, for a boy or a dude is allowed to show vulnerability in a myriad of ways, but for them to cry in particular is tabooed. That is something that is tabooed, forbidden, even dangerous to feminine expressions of tears. I mean, if we were to take masculine tears seriously, could we also manage to take feminine tears seriously too? This is a serious problem for women, something that challenges them deeply in their hearts and in all their houses and homes. Were a man's tears to be taken seriously, especially by them, such would detract from their own tearful expressions. Would anyone else take their tears seriously if they themselves took men's tears seriously? Who else could even do so? These are aspects, again, not of vulnerability per se. Men have many a way to express vulnerability, nor again is it about patriarchal concerns. There is nothing here that goes against patriarchy. Dudes can cry. Always have. The context of it may be different than a woman's tears, but there has never really been a prohibition against dudes crying. The lit on the topic that says otherwise notes the context for tears predicated on why women cry, not why men do. Because of course tears are understood as being in the house of feminine suffering, not men's. So, for many an instance, the contexts whereby men might cry are simply entirely different, and the measures of its occurrence are simply not well accounted for. Something is viewed as being a tearjerker predicated upon the feminine dispositions of tears. Of course, in those very situations men are expected to not cry, and to be there to comfort others. The circumstances of male tears are simply different. Women are not there to comfort them. You can see the entire oddity of the cry point whereby the woman here shows real empathy. Again, which the dude notes, entirely correctly, that her emotive of tears is entirely bullshit, even as it is legit sincere. Women do not comfort men, not because men cannot be comforted, nor again that men don't want to be comforted, but because such is a display in the house of feminine suffering. A father or a mother may comfort a man or even a boy. A man may comfort another man too, as in friends comforting friends. And such isn't particularly awkward, for men are used to comforting people in general. But a woman, for the woman, not the man, such is inherently awkward. She is not supposed to be one to comfort a man. A boy, sure, especially if it is her own son. But beyond that, such is for her to be in a position she is not supposed to be in. She knows how to do it technically, but because it is a man, it's simply out of place for her to do so. Hence in the scene, and I feel like most dudes know this kind of experience, when the dude expressed his pain, shortly after she expresses empathy. And I think it is genuine to the scene, but the only possible follow-up to it is for her to twist the scene, his pain, into her own, that he might have the option of comforting her. Note how in the scene, aside from the brief, though again I think genuine display of empathy and an attempt at comfort, she immediately turns it to her own emotive needs. In this case, to hear him say that he loves her, which, in the light of her inability to show love for him, especially when he expresses himself in tears and vulnerability, he justly says no, he does not. 'Cause she is bullshitting him. Folks can compare this to when his therapist shows him comfort, care, and compassion. He doesn't generally twist it around to him, but keeps pushing the point that it is about the dude's own experiences and feelings. Again, dudes already know how to comfort dudes, and dudes already know how to express vulnerability. The problems are entirely that women bullshit when dudes express tears or vulnerability and twist it towards their own emotive needs, almost reflexively, because it is a dude expressing it. To be clear here, though, women comfort other women just fine. The sickness here is entirely within the heteronormative complex, not the patriarchy. Folks would do well to compare the whole of the scene to the realities of the especially online discourses surrounding gender, whereby, due to beliefs in patriarchy and patriarchal realism in particular, men are blamed for their own victimized status. Rather openly, too.
Come home hammered, looking to wail on somebody. So I'd provoke him so he wouldn't go after my mother and little brother. Interesting nights were when he wore his rings.
He used to just put a wrench, a stick, and a belt on the table and just say choose.
Well, I gotta go with the belt there, Vanna.
I used to go with the wrench.
Why the wrench?
Because fuck him, that's why.
Your foster father.
Yeah. So, what is it, like, Will has an attachment disorder? Is it all that stuff? Fear of abandonment? Is that why I broke up with Skylar?
I didn't know you had.
Yeah, I did.
You wanna talk about it?
No.
Hey, Will. I don't know a lot. You see this? All this shit. This is not your fault. Look at me, son. It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
I know.
No, you don't. It's not your fault.
I know.
It's not your fault.
All right.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault. Don't fuck with me. It's not your fault.
Don't fuck with me, all right? Don't fuck with me, Sean, not you.
It's not your fault. It's not your fault.
Oh my God. Oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Fuck that.